Hello, good morning and welcome to today's webinar, which is analysing whether there is a skills crisis in the fire industry. The webinar is based on research by the Fire Industry Association, or FIA, and we've got their CEO, Ian Moore, here with us to present the findings. My name's Adam Bannister, I'm editor of IFSEC Global. The webinar is presented in association with Firex International and IFSEC Global. The presentation will run for about 40 minutes, half an hour for the presentation, then we're going to have 10 minutes of questions at the end. You can submit questions to Ian at any time during or after the presentation. There's a button there called Ask a Question beneath the presentation. If we don't have time to answer all of the questions, we're going to be creating an article afterwards with Ian's help, which will answer those questions. If you have any audio or other technical problems, then you can submit your questions to the following email address: webinar@firex.co.uk. I'm just going to move the slides along so that email address is on there. Alternatively, there's a button I think called Click Test Your Connection. So if you click on that may sort out the problem as well. Failing that, don't worry, we're going to email you a link later on so you can actually watch the presentation afterwards. Some of the issues that you may experience during the presentation can be solved. Will be got rid of when you actually watch it back afterwards. Okay, I don't want to go on too long. I'm going to hand over to Ian shortly. Thank you very much. I'm now going to pass over to Ian.
Good morning, this is Ian Moore, as Adam just said, CEO of the Fire Industry Association. Hopefully you know who we are, but just in case, I will just rattle on a few of the things that we do. Basically, we're a not-for-profit organisation, which puts us in a good position when we talk about values and our standings and our thoughts on the market and what's happening, and also basically representing nearly 800 members, which is Europe's biggest fire trade association. And one thing we insist upon also is third-party accreditation. So all of our members are professional companies, and it's something that really is the central mantra to what the FIA do, which really is about focusing on raising the bar on professionalism in the fire industry. We've been going for over 100 years now, and we like to think we're getting better by the day, but that's for you to tell us. Okay. First slide we're looking at here. How can we actually find out if there's a skills problem in the market? So what we did, we went out to quite a few companies, and we had 121 companies replied, which is a lot, to be honest. I mean, even though we contacted many, many more, people actually took the time to do very detailed responses. And having about 10 questions on each section, the analyses are on different lines and different areas. And from FIA members and from non-FIA members, just to make sure that we're getting the message across the industry correct, not just our members' views, because most of it is always about professionalism, and say our companies do, and other companies are professional, they just choose sometimes not to join the FIA for whatever reason. Now the individual slides I have available again to send out to you at another time. But we've tried to be kind of generic in the replies, so we don't sort of bore you with data of graphs and small details. But we can go through those later. Okay. So what level of job roles have we been struggling with to recruit in the last 18 months? Well, it's really no surprise to see the experienced junior being quite large there as a section. Juniors without experience you would assume be a lot easier. I don't see why that anybody had many problems at all actually to have somebody that was decent, but experience is very, very difficult. So they have to go through various hoops to get experience, whether that's working at work, apprenticeships or training. We can discuss all those as we go through. And as you come down, you sort of see team leaders and seniors. Again, from what experience they have, it's actually defining what that experience is, and we'll discuss that further as we go down. We talk about competency. And the ones in the bottom are other. There's quite a few others, and there's some weird answers in some of these, but these cover other areas that are not down there, like risk assessment as an example, or fire engineering, and even people doing apprenticeships. So they come under the other category. But as you can see, experienced junior quite clearly is the major problem in recruiting. So what particular roles? Again, technician, and you can probably imagine why again. There's a lot of overlapping skill sets with technicians coming into the market, and to be honest, a lot of people complain about electrical contractors and the fact that they're taking away fire alarm jobs because they work in the same sort of field. So there are some foundation of knowledge from technicians moving across from different, like security or just electrical contracting. The sales and marketing, again, there's some overlapping skill sets. I mean, you need to know technically what you're selling. So if you put that down as technical sales and marketing to do with fire specifically, you can understand more of a problem, because where do you start, basically? So, and again, down the others, we have people like firefighters. We've dealt with firefighters within this recruitment as well, because there's quite a lot of overlap now between what we do with the fire and rescue services and the fire industry. And it's becoming more and more integrated. So there were a couple of people that were responding to this survey that were from the fire and rescue services. And other things down there like estimators and things like this. So there's a whole roll of different areas. But as I say, the technician, quite clearly, streets ahead on that one, and they see that as their main problem, trying to get somebody in as a young technician. And that's what we'll talk about, how we can actually approach that. Okay, how many people have you actually hired? None. Quite big, 1 to 3. Now you've got to remember, most companies in Britain are firefighting companies, or fire safety, companies are SMEs. So these figures are going to be small, and the only people moving into sort of the 6 to 10, 11, 20, and more than 20 are going to be some of the big boys out there in the market, who still have their own issues, but they're a little bit more in control of their own destiny in a way that they can afford to have their own training colleges for products and for sales skills, etc., etc. But the smaller SMEs, very, very difficult to hire young people who have little experience, and if they do have young guys coming through or young ladies coming through, it's always going to be a problem. And this kind of highlights it to us as well, having these figures. So again, small companies, big companies, all having the same sort of problems here. And then we talk about in the future. So what are we going to do in the future? I think clearly, again, yes. Easy said. Does it actually transmit to actually hiring people? But the intention is there to bring people on board. I think we've heard many, many speeches by various people talking about apprenticeships and skill sets, that they really need to get young talent into the fire industry. And it's something we don't have in a lot of areas, and those that do come through are usually quite visible to others. You tend to see the young people coming through that have skill sets in certain areas. So again, a lot of intention, and we'll see if that actually fulfills coming through. How do they find out? This is an interesting one for me. It's something we've always talked about nobody at school says to their recruitment officer or talks to their friends about, what do you want to do? I want to be in the fire industry. It just doesn't happen. I mean, it's not exactly a sexy role, but you look at firefighters, yes, they are. I mean, that's a different thing altogether, and a different trade, effectively, than what we're talking about here. So we really need to get a stronger message out. So if you look down there about family and friends and recruitment agencies, I think nearly all of us would have gone through that path. So if you didn't know somebody in the industry, you just happen to come across it someday and thinking, well, that sounds interesting, I'll have a go at that. There's no real career path mapped out from school, colleges, and even up to degree level. There's very limited options on degrees of fire engineering or similar type roles. So people tend to stumble into our industry, and we've got to do something about that, because otherwise we're just basically taking people who maybe a little bit bored and want to try something else, or maybe failing in what they're currently doing. We need to start looking at the best people to come through to our industry. And there's several ways which we'll go through as we come to those as well. So talking about the different sectors where they operate, again, not surprising. You look at fire detection and alarm. It's certainly the biggest section within the FIA, and we can pretty much relate to these going down about membership within FIA. You look at, say, 800 members. Within probably 500 to 600 of those will operate in fire detection and alarm. They'll do others as well. There's a lot of overlaps. They'll also do extinguishers and risk assessments, fire engineering, emergency lighting, extinguishing systems, etc. But that is the dominant sector. And the others, again, we have people like in project management, passive protection, suppliers to fire and rescue services, which is one of our councils as well, the Fire ESA Council. And you get also manufacturers, wholesalers that work within this different areas. So, and of course the fire and service personnel as well, as we mentioned before. One of the areas we're working in some of our companies actually with trading arms of fire and rescue services, which is another indication. I think we have about 5 as members now of the FIA, showing the fact we're working closer now with fire and rescue services. So there is starting to be more of an overlap between the two. So I'm hoping that people within the fire and rescue service or about to leave are looking at industry as an area they want to move into, which should add some experience and talent into what we're doing currently. Okay, looking at regions, I mean, this is probably one of the few graphs you see where Southeast isn't dominant. I mean, London and Southeast, I suppose, joined together would be. They've been isolated out from this one. But as you can see, you know, it's not surprising seeing these results. It's pretty much based on topography and you know, the number of opportunities are in the region. But again, we can split this down to the individual sections as well, if you need to see that later on. We asked a question of quite a few people about, you know, would you actually be interested in helping us roll out a new scheme to promote careers? And there's a lot of no's there, which is surprised me, to be honest. But it purely comes down to time. I mean, obviously both post Grenfell, and would be amiss not to mention that as well. I think everybody in a fire company's business is really accelerated. And I'm glad to say also the professional companies are beginning to sort of distance themselves a little bit because of what they offer, and to assure their customers and people living in their buildings. So are they just too busy? There's not enough time. How can they help? I think we've asked our members for help in different areas many times, and sometimes we get some good results and sometimes we don't. And of course, many of them know about already the Trailblazer apprenticeships, which came online, which we're involved with ECA and BSIA. Sorry to use acronyms on those, but with Security and Electrical Contractors Association. And a lot of people already know that they're in existence, so why should they sort of help us to start creating new careers within it? So it's really for us representing our members to get off with this and just get started on starting to promote it a little bit better. So having all that information, clearly understanding there are gaps in the market and for skilled labour, what are we actually going to do about it? So what we did, we went out and did a survey, which is the easiest thing to do sometimes, but you have to push quite hard to get some good results. And we're also planning an awareness campaign because we've got to start from the roots of this. As I said, nobody looks into school and thinks about, I want to get in the fire industry, unless, of course, they know somebody already working on it and said, this is a great life. And we need to tell our story. I mean, we have a great story of what we do, and I think it's you can underestimate it. And I look at where I've been over the years of, 25 years plus of being in the fire industry, and to go into oil rigs and go into road tunnels when they're closed at midnight and go around cathedrals, tower blocks, never-ending variety of places to go. And when you're doing either surveys or just doing risk assessments and everything else like this, there is no end to where you can go around the world on this journey, as it were. And we need to tell people about that. So we're actually going to be starting doing a campaign at schools to raise that. And the nice thing is we've got 800 member companies all around the country and UK, so we can actually get them to start going to their local schools representing what the FIA's message is to talk about these things. So hopefully we'll get a good and strong response from that. And of course we started to make nationally recognised qualifications. It's always been an issue about people with careers that they need to have qualifications to almost justify a career going through. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. So, looking at education, we'll ask the question, why study and pass exams? I mean, we've got to define competency. You see a lot of stuff on the Hackett report and everywhere else that people always consistently come back to this one word about competency. And it's such an easy word to use to sort of say, you must be competent to do this job. What does that mean? So we're actually trying to define that by doing proper learning sessions with nationally qualified exams to actually put a bar on that. So we're trying to increase the relevant knowledge, as it says here, increase confidence of people, hiring people as well. So if somebody has a nationally recognised qualification, they know to employ them and have confidence to do so. So also gain credibility for themselves and for their companies, and give themselves some career progression. They're the sort of main sort of areas that we're looking for to push on. So what we've done in the FIA is we looked at some courses. Needless to say, we focused on FD&A, fire detection and alarm. And the reason we've done that again is the pure numbers of people in the industry working in this particular sector of the fire industry. So it's logical that's where we make a start. And the common units we've already got started on. People have sat these and passed them. Much more difficult than people thought, and we thought, to be honest. I think we all assumed we knew everything about we needed to know, but when you're going through proper exam processes, where there's a separation between the awarding organisation and the trainer, these are not just book open exams. These are real proper back to your school day exams. And the foundation units we've got is on fire detection and alarm, environment and health and safety. You must pass all of those three to prepare yourself to one of the four directions. And we've designated these as design, installation, maintenance and commissioning, and everything within that to a certain level. And the levels we're going up to is QFC, which is Qualifications Curriculum Framework Level 3, and to try and give it a bar, although it's quite awkward, is about A-level standard. So you can probably imagine training people for 2 or 3 to 5 days in total on all of these things. It's a hard ask to ask people to do that. So we're assuming people come into this with a degree of knowledge. Now, whether that's pre-learning or of course, working on the job for some time, we're still finding people failing this quite regularly because there are so many changes in regulations and theories about how we go about these different things constantly coming through. It's surprising, and the pre-learning information is quite extensive. So when people do pass these, they can be very, very proud of themselves that they've got a serious qualification that, although we recognise what it is, we're trying to get the industry to be more recognising of this. So effectively we're setting a bar for competency at first stage on FD&A. So one of the key subjects we go on about is within the FIA, and I'm quite keen on this myself, is about the career pathway. It's all well and good sort of doing a little bit somewhere, then moving on somewhere else. We've got to take it all the way through from beginning to end. So we're starting with that awareness at the schools and colleges by some campaigns we've got coming up. We're involved in the apprenticeships to look for the different marks. I think it's called T-level now, if I remember rightly, with Trailblazer and other ones as well coming through, developing and helping assist people with on-job training. There's some basic external training courses. We deliver nearly 4,000 of these a year previously of what we used to do. I mean, we use basic because we're just trying to introduce people to what's going on in the fire safety market. And then many other suppliers of these as well in different areas. There are good, solid training courses with exams that give people a degree of knowledge. But again, they're varied. So this is why we had to up our game. And we took a huge risk doing this. I mean, we actually had the awarding organisation back in 2014. And we've spent a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds, setting up this opportunity for people. And we're not for profit, so please remember that we're not doing this for any other reason apart from we believe we have to raise the bar. Now, one of the other things to go to the way through is we're working with the University of Central Lancashire, UCLan. They already do a lot of work with IFE, which is one of our fellow organisations for individuals, predominantly within the Fire and Rescue Service, to be honest, but other areas as well. And we're looking then to accept this as a module within their degree. So once people start down this path of taking these qualifications, they're on the route all the way through to taking a fire engineering degree based up in UCLAM, which can be done either remotely or going out there as well, like a correspondence one, either way. We think this is quite a nice change in what we do now, that we don't just do a bit of this and a bit of that, do a little bit of product training. People are actually coming in really thinking of a true career all the way through that they stay with. Okay, that's pretty much the straightforward I want to go through on the presentation. I've got a lot of questions coming through at the moment, so what I've got here is some have sent through to us as we were talking, as I was talking, sorry, there's no we. As I was talking to you, a lot of questions came through, and we had some prepared on the machines before. So are you going to go through these, Adam, or do you want me to? You just ask the questions we've got down there. So you're going to hear Adam asking the questions, because he's got them all in front of him on the machine, and I'll do my best to answer them. Now, my answers will be brief, for needless to say we're limited on time, but I'm absolutely comfortable in giving you a full answer to all of these questions, because I can only cover some of them, and those I do will be very limited answers due to time, and then I can follow that up later on. So, Adam?
Great, that was great. Thanks, Ian. For everyone that's still with us, thanks for attending. Don't want to keep you too much longer, so let's get on with the questions. So the first question, Ian, is how can we make young men and women see the fire industry as an attractive career?
Yeah, okay. I think I covered this a little bit earlier on, but I say these have been historic coming through. So, but basically the marketing. I think it's for us to tell our story and just make sure that we tell them, and it's a little bit more exciting than it sounds at first. And looking at the various careers there are, and the places you can do them, and the places it takes you. I mean, I've been to personally living in Taiwan for 3 years doing fire work with Cerberus, the old company, and Dubai for 3 years, and you know, you can move all around the world in different aspects and see so many different things, and we really need to be able to tell people that's what the potential is. Needless to say, it will probably start with a small local company, but the opportunities are there to open up, and it's quite an exciting career to get into.
Thanks, Ian. That's great. Next question is, are major construction companies, building portfolio managers, and the enforcing authorities, i.e. HSE and FRS, are they ever going to work together?
Yeah, rather irrelevant question based on what's going on with the Hackett report and what's going to follow up on it. The easy answer is I really hope so. I think they're starting to already, based on the push to see what if you get it wrong, what happens. We'll see what happens with legislation. I mean, the government are very, very keen on reducing legislation. They've made that very clear, and Dame Judith Hackett's always pointing at the audience and saying, you lot need to get your act together and work together better. And a big drive is also about cultural change. If you read through any of their reports, you'll see this push that there must be a cultural change, which we all believe in, and there's nothing's changed in our views on that. We know we've been discussing this for many, many years, but the only problem being is cultural change is very easy until you're actually driven by commercial companies. They will drive prices down to the bottom eventually. It's for us really as an industry to stop that happening, and also government to get involved at whatever level they need to. So let's see what happens with the follow-up to the Hackett review. And remember, it is just a review at the moment, so there's only recommendations in there, and it's what actual local government and various other people decide to take on board and put into place.
Thanks, Ian. Next question. What is the labour market like for a fire safety consultant?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about risk assessment within this, I suppose. It's probably the best one. There are a lot of issues. Insurance premiums have gone up enormously for professional indemnity in risk assessment, people doing that job. So, and it's going to get more and more difficult. And there's always an issue with this about competency in risk assessment, because you can be absolutely top of your game on high-rise buildings and care homes or high-risk areas, all these different areas, and there are some fantastic people around to do amazingly good jobs and immense knowledge. But then you just put them on an oil rig the following day, and there's no difference in clarification about what they do and don't do. So you need to define where we are, which sectors we work well within the fire safety area, and it's a difficult area to be in, because how do you train somebody? You know, I often ask my mentor in risk assessment, Colin Todd. I said, well, why can't we do a training course on risk assessment? Now, you can do an introduction to it, but you can never really train anybody. It's purely about experience and just on-the-job training as you're doing it as well. So it's a difficult one to get into, but it's something we need to address and try and sort of set that bar for competency on the introductory level.
Thanks again, Ian. Okay, the next question, it's a long one, but it's a really interesting one. The person who asked it is from Kenya, or based in Kenya, and like many African nations, he or she said that they don't have definitive fire standards. So they're asking, does the FIA provide special support to individuals and or companies outside the UK and EU who are adopting UK legislation or attend FIA courses?
Yeah, I mean, we have members from overseas, not too many. I wish we had more, but it is a drive area for us, and we're recognising the fact that anybody who wants to take on board British standards, that we're going to get our support. So I've discussed this at length actually with BSI, and we talk about products as well with BRE in different areas, but specifically with BSI, looking about where they are strong in the world and how we can support them. So we know in some countries, predominantly Commonwealth countries, that they're still using that with a few adaptations, but the ethos is there with British standards as we know them. So yes, we do support. In fact, we've got a mission coming back end of this year into South Africa, and we're having discussions about standards right now, about we make sure we're overlapping and training and supporting. But individuals who are members of the FIA from overseas, absolutely they get full support, same as any other member. So the answer is yes.
Fantastic. Okay, moving on. Will fire risk assessors require mandatory third-party accreditation post the Judith Hackett final report on the Grenfell Tower fire?
Well, again, we hope so. I mean, third-party accreditation is our mantra amongst everything we do. So anybody who joins our organisation would have that. But whether they'll be mandatory, we really hope. Again, her recommendations are quite clear to read at the end of it. We'll see what they come with at the end of it. But there has to be some form of register for risk assessment. This is where we start, basically, having done sort of fire safety reviews, looking at risk assessments, etc., etc. So, again, I don't know, because we don't know what's going to come out of it. But we are all pushing for that. That's what we would like to see, and we really hope that does happen.
Fantastic. Someone asked about FireX, which is happening next month, 19th to the 21st of June at London Excel. So, Ian, do you want to tell us a bit about the FIA's involvement at FireX?
Yeah, it's probably it is our biggest show that we do every year, and I think I've been going for so many years. It's quite extraordinary, and it's basically an opportunity to show and tell, and also catch up with people, the networking. We've got a bar, which is the ultimate, I suppose, in networking area there. So we get all our members to come in and discuss latest issues. Obviously, we're trying to attract new members by showing about what we do and how we can influence and what's in it for them, basically. But FireX itself is an opportunity. It's a shop window. It's for people to come along and greet and meet and see the latest, and if they have new innovations in different areas, that's the opportunity they have to actually show them. And a lot of overseas visitors as well won't come to see individual companies for obvious reasons. They can't afford to do so. So this is a great opportunity for them to come across and meet many of their suppliers, customers, and gain some new ideas. So we're always very much looking forward to it. It's kind of an iconic diary date of the year.
Okay, thank you. The next one is about fire systems design. Ian, what training is there for fire systems design in the UK?
Yeah, we have one of them. I think, I'm pretty sure I showed you a graph earlier looking at the different sections of basically doing design, install, maintain, and commission. So that, I have to say, is the premier one at the moment. I would say being an FIA course, but it is the truth. It's the only one that actually has a nationally recognised qualification on the end of it. So again, if you look on our website, you'll see the opportunities and what the curriculum is of that to get that done. And that's the only place you can go right now.
Okay. Next one. The use of subcontract labour to carry out routine maintenance and call-outs is on the rise due to a lack of PAYE talent. Is this the way the industry is heading? Less PAYE and more subcontractors? And if so, how do we regulate the subcontract workforce?
Yeah, I think we're here already with this. I mean, we've had many comments on many surveys, and obviously talking to our members about subcontractors coming in. I think also a lot of fire companies feel a little bit aggrieved about electrical contractors just taking fire and say, yeah, we can do that, and off they go, and quite often make a real mess of it because they have nobody specifically trained on what we do in our industry. When the Hackett review came, there were 6 working groups initially. There's a couple more added later, but we were in 4 of those, and we really were working within those areas of the words responsibility and competence, and basically defining what, who, where, why, and everything else within that. So we put a lot of input into that Hackett report that talks about these particular issues. So if you look at also procurement as a new section within the Hackett review, talking about how they subcontract works, what is and who's responsible. I think you're going to see a lot of changes in this area, and again with formal qualifications there is available on the guys who actually rolling their sleeves up doing the work on site, as in sort of contractors. We're actually sort of quite clearly putting a bar in there that said this is the minimum level to say somebody is competent, and we're going to push hard on that.
Okay. Next question. Apart from product training, are there any educational institutes to teach people the necessary skills?
Yeah, there's a few around, apart from our own. IFE have a long-standing relationship with training people, or giving qualifications anyway. The training can come from a number of areas, but as an awarding organisation, there's ourselves and IFE in our industry. But there's lots of other areas we do good training, FPA, the Fire Security Association, many more. These are areas that actually can bring people's knowledge up to a certain degree. The only difference we've done on ours is really actually to define what that level is, and there are lots of opportunities to get training on areas. Product training tends to be done by the manufacturer for obvious reasons.
Thanks, Ian. Someone wanted to know about the latest fire prevention techniques.
This is probably a nice one for Firex, actually, I would say. I mean, there's some great stuff around. I mean, I'm always impressed with new innovations of different areas. I was involved very heavily with video smoke detection in my early days, so I'm always very promotive of innovation. But lots of techniques, and it's good to hear the word prevention, as in prevention, not cure. We need to get our job right to make sure that the Fire Rescue Service don't have to do their job, which they do unbelievably well, but it's really for us to stop that, getting to that stage as best as possible. So lots of things are going to change, and lots of products, even things like constant monitoring of devices. We heard one the other day, extinguishing, like a company called Coltraco, who do constant monitoring of areas that are for extinguishing, and also the cylinders to make sure that they're constantly the right pressure, the right values, and everything else. So they're just little ideas that all add up towards us being on top of things. So any maintenance really is not, it's really just checking everything's in place and working okay. But as I say, if you want to see new techniques, new ideas, there's no better showcase than Firex coming up.
Right. Okay, the next person said they're currently serving in the Royal Air Force and they're considering a future career in fire detection and alarms, which is great to hear. Their question is, would the FIA training courses provide him or her with enough training to gain employment in the industry?
Yeah, well, first thing I say, I'm ex-Royal Navy, so I don't think I've done too bad in the industry for 25 years to sort of get to it, and I came out of the forces, and again, I just drifted into this, saw an advert in the Telegraph, and away you go. So there was no real knowledge of the industry. But where we are with this, I mean, let's be honest, the training that we can do, give you qualifications. We can't guarantee you employment, of course not, but I think you can see from these reports that are coming through about being short of labour and everything else that there is a real requirement in the industry. And anybody coming in with a good background and with nationally recognised qualifications really is going to walk into some prime positions. So Absolutely yes, and we would also do everything we can to support you doing that.
Ian, great answer. Okay, I think we've got 4 or 5 minutes left. I think that's all the questions we've flagged. But Ian, is there anything else you feel equipped to take on?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions come through on the bottom of the screen now. So there's only 5 more, so I'll be very quick, literally 5 minutes. One was asking about when the first qualifications will be available. Basically June is the first ones coming out with certificates, which is the installation courses, and they're coming in throughout the year. So throughout this year we'll be picking up and giving out qualifications to those who pass. Second question I got was, are there likely to be more courses and exams outside of fire detection and alarm systems? The answer is yes. We're already planning on portables and we'll be drifting it wider and wider. FIA is very much about holistic fire safety, so this is just the start. So we had to start somewhere, and as it is the biggest section, that's where we started, but most certainly there is. And we already continue to do the courses we've already been doing. As I say, we train over 4,000 people a year on a variety of things like emergency lighting and various other approval standards, product ideas of Halon and anything else like that. So yes, the answer is yes on that. Third question I've got here is, are these courses available to non-FIA members? Yes, they are, quite simply. Again, on the website you'll see all that. So you do get an advantage by being a member, of course, because it's cheaper. That's one of the reasons people join sometimes, I think. Fourth one, is there much support from industry and or government to support this direction of nationally recognised qualifications? I'd say no at the moment, but that's what we're trying to do. I mean, the biggest push we've got post-Hackett report, when she's asking for these in a sort of recommendations, we'll see what happens. And we've got meetings coming up with government officials at the highest level, ministerial level and down, to sort of say you must support us in this, and we're investing a lot into raising the bar on this, so you've got to support us and do this. And industry also, we want industry to be accepting of the fact there is a level we can reach now. Okay, the final question I've got down here is, do you support the Trailblazer Apprenticeship Scheme? I mentioned that already. Yes, we already do that. And we're very much behind that. That's a different form of training, and we're very much behind any apprenticeship schemes or anything that raises the bar on professionalism. But there are lots of other questions that came through, but I say I really don't have time now. We're getting towards the end. So if you want to put those to Adam and myself by email, more than happy to pick up on that. And I'll answer every one of them fully, I guarantee you. And all I'll say, I'll sign off now and pass back to Adam. But all I want to say is thank you very much for listening. Much appreciated. And hopefully see you all at FireX.
Fantastic. That was great. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, any more questions? Sorry if we didn't answer your question. He will answer it afterwards. You can email those questions or any further questions to webinar@firex.co.uk. I think you could even submit a question now in the last couple of minutes if you wanted to. Anyway, we're also going to email you within the next 2 weeks roughly your attendance certificate, a link to the presentation if you need to watch it again, which you may do if you had any audio problems or anything like that, a PDF of the slides. You can also watch it on FIA Global. We'll wrap things up then. Thank you very much for attending. Hope it was useful. I certainly found it really interesting, and the FIA are doing some really good things on this issue, so hopefully they will bear fruit over the next few years. Just from me, Adam Bannister and FIA Global, thanks again, and thanks again to Ian Moore and the FIA. Goodbye.